Hello to you, friends. This is Dhamma on Air number 24 on cosmology and Genesis, that is, the creation of the universe and the emergence of human beings according to the Lord Buddha. There are 5 questions. They all circle around this cosmology and Genesis. And we will, in the end, read aloud 4 pages of the Sutta, where Buddha explains this, is from the Digha Nikaya, the long speeches of the Sutta. It is a Sutta number, or the thread number 127, called Aggañña Sutta, the speech on the understanding of the beginning. But first, a normal intro. Namo Tasso Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Worthy, honorable, and perfectly self-enlightened was the blessed Buddha. Question number 47, the first one in this Dhamma on Air, goes like this. Has the Lord Buddha ever said that studying the universe, stars and galaxies is a useless thing? No, he's not said that. That's a misunderstanding. However, what he did say to a deva who was traveling with the speed of thought and had tried all his life to reach the end of the universe, and failing to do so, came back to the Buddha and asked him how to reach the end of the universe. Then the Buddha implied that it was a useless thing to try to reach the end of the universe. Why so? Because he said the universe starts and ends within these 2 meters frame of body and mind. Again, the universe starts and ends within these 2 meters frame of body and mind. So that's a very remarkable statement given to this deva. It goes against naive reality that there is a universe out there that is observer independent. That is to say, that it is there whether it's observed or not. However, this sentence, which is apparently mystical of nature, comes to make sense when we go into orthodox contemporary quantum mechanics, where the statement goes like this, that the particle, whether it's a photon, a neutron, or an electron, whatever material particle, matter, all matter is made out of, does not have any specific location before it is observed. Again, the particle does not have a specific location before it is observed. And in general, it does not have any property whatsoever before it is observed. It does not have any spin. You cannot say what direction the spin has. The photon doesn't have any polarity, and so on. So the system doesn't have any properties before it's observed. This means that it is observation itself that flicks the quantum of energy that this particle is from one of its manifestations, that is a waveform of probabilities, that it can have many certain properties, many observable locations, but doesn't have any specific of them before it is observed. This entails that it is the observing mind, as the Buddha said, that makes this electron manifest in a specific place. It is the observing mind that makes this universe, this space-time, emerge with specific characteristics. This implies that the observer is not independent from what he observes. It does not imply that the universe and particles and matter is an illusion. It is not. It doesn't say that. It says, according to quantum mechanics, that this has this wave-particle duality, that all quanta, all particles can be either waves. Waves of what? Waves of probability. That is a field that is spread out over a non-local region. Don't have any specific location. And then they can have this complementary characteristic of being a point-like particle that has a specific location. So Buddha there points to a very specific, subtle view of reality that is dependent on the observing mind. And in accordance with contemporary quantum mechanics, defies the requirement of reality. That is, that the observed thing is there and remains there before and after it is observed, and has the characteristics, the attributes that we observe also before and after the observation. But this goes against measurement, actually. Because if you try to measure this, then it is true and observable, repeatable, observable, that this quanta of energy does not have any specific location or properties whatsoever if unobserved. Then they have a distribution of probabilities for being observed at various specific locations, expelling various specific properties. This underpins the principle of dependent origination, paticca samuppada, co-dependent origination, where it is the observing mind that make the world, the particle, the matter, the forms manifest within certain ranges of probabilities, within certain possibilities given by nature. So it's a middle view of reality. It's neither an illusion, nor is it naive reality. It's in accordance with contemporary, experimentally verified quantum physics. It's subtle, but it's also a very open and observer-dependent view of physical reality. If we go back to the Buddhist description of it, then he would say it depends and hinge, and all physicists and philosophers has to come back to this, that there has to be the phenomena called phassa, or contact. That is, the visual form has to meet the eye, and thereby visual consciousness arises. And the co-occurrence of these three, visual form, eye sensitivity, and visual consciousness, is contact, visual contact, phassa. But there you see that this visual consciousness plays an important part in the equation of how this emerge, how this contact emerge, how this reality emerge. So the consciousness is an important part, an integral part of both the Buddhist description of the universe and human beings, and also of the external universe. It starts and ends within this frame of body and mind. It doesn't make sense to say it is out there, independent of the observing mind, that it has any independent reality or existence. This one is not allowed to say either in quantum mechanics. There the observation has to occur for the phenomena to take specific, emerge in specific location, manifest itself as a particle, as something that can be observed with specific properties. So it's not a useless thing. He didn't say that. But it's a useless thing to try to reach the end of it. It's a naive reality view that is independent of the observing mind. I hope this answers this question. Has the Lord Buddha ever said starting of mankind happened from the evolution of apes, of monkeys? No, he didn't say that. Actually, he said the opposite. He said the evolution of human beings comes, and we will see that when I read out the text, comes from an evolution of Apasara devas that survives the big crunch because they're made of light, they're made of radiation, they're feeding on joy. They still have a physical form because light is physical, but it's not a material form that has any weight. And they survive the big crunch, that is, after the expansion a long period of time, which we also predicted, then there will be a contraction, and then there will be phenomena in contemporary physics called big crunch. And after a while, this cycle will start with a big bang again, an expansion of the universe, formation of the galaxies, and then after a while, because of gravity, this will start to contract again because the galaxies become heavier and heavier, and it becomes more and more black holes, and then suddenly it starts to contract slowly and end with a big crunch. This is called the bounce theory, the bounce back theory, and this was predicted by Buddha 2,500 years ago, and it was only the non-steady state idea of the universe was only discovered by Sir Edward Hubble in the 30s, when he discovered that there was a redshift in all observation of galaxies from planet Earth, and then they seemed therefore to move away from us, and the universe was expanding in all directions. This has been confirmed since. This you could only see with very large observatories, astronomical observatories, and also spectrometers that could measure the color of light and the wavelength of light very accurately. But the Buddha didn't have that. But he had access to information that still made him predict very accurately and describe in detail how the universe contracts and expands between the cycle of big crunch and big bang, and what is generally called the big bounce theory, which the Buddha has confirmed. We'll come also, but he basically says that this apasana devas made of light, then they get a desire to taste the emerging planets, because they look like skimmed milk on the surface. And when they do that, then they attain gradually, very slowly, over millions of years, physical properties. That is, they lose their ability to move through the space freely, because they're made of light. So they get physical properties. So the evolution comes from, not from the apes, but from the apasana devas. how did the planet Earth and mankind emerge according to Lord Buddha? Yes, how it emerges is the same as in modern cosmology. Big Bang, Big Crunch. There's a formation of particles, and these particles coalesce because of gravity. They gravitate towards each other because they have mass. And then they form heavier and heavier elements, and suddenly from gas clouds, slowly planets, more and more dense gas cloud planets are formed. A very, very slow process. Mankind was as before. It was a slow evolution, a degradation, a slow, very slow degradation, which I will read about in loud, so you can evaluate for yourself what he said. By direct citation, it was a slow evolution from a divine, relatively high divine Deva, called the Brahma Devas, that got a desire to taste, basically, how it was to taste. Because if you're made alive and you're feeding on joy, you usually don't taste anything in the sense we use the word taste. So it was actually sense desire for tasting something that drove the evolution from Apasara Deva. Apasara means shining from wherever. A glory from wherever. Divine being. That survives and is outside the region of the Big Bang, Big Crunch. Which the Buddha says does not happen only for the entire universe, but there's many universes that are in a cycle between Big Bang and Big Crunch, which makes sense because then there will be conservation of mass and conservation of energy in the multiverse as a whole. And there are many world systems like that, many universal cycles. So he predicted that we live in a multiverse. And this is not a generally accepted idea, but has been proposed today in modern cosmology, in many theories. And also that the observer has a role to play there, that he cannot be taken out. The observing beings cannot be taken out from the universe that emerges, because then it doesn't emerge. It doesn't have the properties to be inhabitable if there are no observers. How does the end of the world, question 50 goes like this. How does the end of the world and the universe happen according to Lord Buddha? Yes, he says basically that it starts to contract. And here the description is more detailed than you can see in modern cosmology books, because he says that when you start to contract, of course the planet comes closer and closer to each other. Thereby also the suns come closer and closer to each other. That is, our neighboring solar systems, they come close to us. And he says when you can see three suns from the surface of the planet Earth. Then the oceans has evaporated, so there's only you can walk in the Atlantic and it's only ankle deep. Then he says when you can see 5 suns, then all surface water have evaporated from the surface of planet Earth. The temperature is so high, average temperature is higher than 100 degrees Celsius, and there's no fluid water on planet Earth. It's all vapor in gas phase. And lastly, when you can see 7 suns from the planet Earth, then the nuclear implosion happens and Big Crunch happens. After a series of condensations of black holes will then coalesce, and then this enormous mass is created that creates even bigger gravitational forces in itself, and then suddenly it collapses into a non-classical state of space and time called the singularity. And then it stays there for a while. And I can show you some pictures of this so you can get the modern idea of this. If we start with the Big Bang first here, so there's some quantum fluctuations. Then there's, right after the Big Bang, there's an inflation period where it expands exceedingly rapidly. Then there's an afterglow of light after approximately 400,000 years. And this afterglow of light has been observed by this VMAP recently sent out satellite, which has tried to look back in time to see this non-uniformity of the cosmic background radiation, which is basically a picture of what happened there 400,000 years after the inflation of the last Big Bang there has been. Then come the Dark Ages, the first stars around 400 million years, then slowly development of galaxies and planets over the next 13 billion years, and then acceleration by dark energy as we have now, where the expansion has started to accelerate, the expansions of time-space, basically, and everything. This means that we are also getting bigger without noticing it. The whole universe is space itself that is getting bigger. All points in space are coming more and more further and further apart from each other. It should be seen as a bread. If you have a raisin bread, then if it expands, then there will become more and more distance between the raisins inside the bread. And it's the same model you can use here. So we're roughly around 13.7 billion years from the Big Bang now. And it will continue to expand, and it seems to be expanding faster and faster. Then what it says is that there will be it will keep expanding until a maximum expansion of the universe. Then there will be a contraction, as also the Buddha says, and we will read out the text. And then there will be this conflation, nuclear fire, you can say, and then the formation of black holes, which will crunch together until there is a singularity, an unclassical point-like space-time that has no extension. Then a new Big Bang from these quantum fluctuations of the last universe is created, and then a new cycle of this big crunch, Big Bang, and the big bounce happens. It's not something that is uniformly accepted now, because there's other alternatives. It could keep expanding in infinite expansion, becoming colder and colder. This is called the Big Chill. And there's a lot of discussion recently. It can also be just go into a steady state, and this that is infinitely expanding is called the open universe, and that is going into a big crunch is called the closed universe. And if it's just staying the same, then it's a flat universe. But what Buddha says is unequivocally that the universe is closed, that it goes from Big Bang to Big Crunch. It doesn't keep expanding. It doesn't go into a big chill where everyone is losing contact with each other. You cannot see any stars, you cannot see any moons, or anything, because everything is just spread out in an infinite over amount of space. This is not real. This is not the fact. So there's a take-home to the modern cosmologists. Again, if we take the three, there can be big crunch here, starts with a hot universe, becomes colder, then it starts again contracting, and then big crunch. Then it can continue forever at the same space with slow expansion, and then there can be this big chill where it keeps expanding out and becoming colder and colder and more blue. But if we should go back to what Buddha says, and also what I continue myself to believe is most realistic, is this big bounce theory of the universe, where you have a prior universe, a pre-existing universe that collapsed due to gravity into a non-classical quantized space-time called the singularity. And then there's a new Big Bang, and then a new classical space-time is created, and it keeps expanding. And that this cycle between these two states of expansion and contraction, Big Bang, Big Crunch, continue forever. This is what loop quantum cosmology says about the universe. And this seems to be what Buddha says is the most realistic, with a small addition or correction that he would not agree that space-time is only quantized in the singularity. He would say that space-time is also quantized now. We're also living on a grid now that is non-continuous. That is to say, space is not continuous, it is a grid, and time is also not as continuous, it's blinking. So this is a discrete, quantized space-time. So that's another take-home for cosmologists that are interested in Buddhism. So you can see that the Buddhist predictions actually are very specific, remarkably specific, because he has no instruments. So how could he know that? This gives something, an idea about the range of the Buddhas. That we say they cannot be predicted, what the range, what they can know, what they can perceive, and what they cannot know, what they cannot perceive. It cannot be understood, except by other Buddhas. And if you try, you get either confused or mad. The last graph here is about the size of the universe. Here it goes up, and then there's a time of the Big Bang and Big Crunch here. This is current, and what also Buddha points to, that is, it has a cosmological value that is above 1. It's a closed universe. It goes to a big crunch over time. So he excludes there's a flat universe. There's a cosmological constant, omega, is exactly 1. And he excludes also an open universe where the omega is less than 1. And it's just keeping expanding into the big chill or cold death. He excludes these two. The universe is not open, it's not flat, it's closed. It cycles between Big Bang and Big Crunch. And it's called the Big Bounce theory. This is what the Buddha says is the most realistic idea about the physical universe. And also in agreement with quantum mechanics, then he says that it is observer dependent. It is not something that happens out there of the observing mind. The observing mind is an integral part of it that cannot be cut out and said that it makes sense to talk about space and time and matter and weight and properties and systems that has definite attributes or qualities without a mind that observes. Doesn't make sense. It is not realistic, because you have to come back to the phenomena of observation, of measurement, of contact, to speak meaninglessly. It makes sense in any kind of the word, of something that exists, that it has to be observed. If it's not observed, how can you know it exists? And how can you say it has any properties? It's pure metaphysical speculation. So that's what he says about how the end of the universe. So it's worth noticing the following facts. What Buddha said is in agreement with a very subtle view, not uniformly accepted today among quantum physics, of contemporary classical quantum mechanics, is in agreement with the Copenhagen school interpretation of quantum mechanics, which is orthodox even today, that says that no systems has any properties before it's observed, that no particle has a specific location before it's observed. This Buddha agrees with. Secondly, that he says it's a closed universe, that cycles between Big Bang and Big Crunch. And in between there's the first very rapid expansion, and then there's a contraction, and then there's a big crunch, and then starts a new Big Bang, and so the cycle goes. It's called the Big Bounce. This he confirms. So he says it's a closed universe with a cosmological constant corresponding to that. It's a closed, it's not flat, it's not infinitely expanding. It will start contraction again. Now I think it's time to read up what the Buddha says actually in abbreviated form, and again it is the Digha Nikaya number 27. If you like to study this more seriously for yourself, which I can recommend. This is Discourses of the Buddha, the long Discourses of the Buddha. It's translated by Maurice Walshe. It's usually green in color, and it contains all the long discourses. The Buddha said, there comes a time, Vasita, when sooner or later, after a long period, the world contracts into a big crunch. At that time of contraction, beings are mostly reborn in the Apasara Brahma world. There they dwell, mind-made, feeding on joy, self-luminous, made of light, moving through space, glorious, and they stay like that for a very, very long time. But sooner or later, after a very long period, this universe, undergoes Big Bang and starts to expand again. At that time of expansions, the beings from the Apasara Brahma world, having passed away from there, are mostly reborn in this universe. Here they dwell, mind-made, feeding on joy, self-luminous, moving through this space, glorious, and they stay that for a very long time. At that period, Vasita, there's just one mass of water, and all was darkness, blinding darkness. Water element here should be understood. There is one mass or one big thing of cohesion, which is the water element. It should not be understood as water in the sense we have today. And all was darkness, blinding darkness. Neither moon nor sun appeared. No constellation or stars appeared. Night and day were not distinguished, no months or fortnights, no years or seasons, and no male or female beings were reckoned just as beings. And sooner or later, after a very long period of time, a savory earth spread itself, where those beings, it emerged, where those beings were, and it looks just like the skin that forms itself over hot milks as it cools. It was endowed with color, smell, and taste. It was the color of fine ghee or butter, and it was very sweet, like pure wild honey. Then some of these beings made of light, feeding on joy, but being of a greedy nature. They said, I say, what can this be? And took a finger and tasted this savory earth, or solidity, on its finger. And in so doing, it became taken with the flavor, and craving arose in it for taste, sense desire. Then other beings, taking the cue from that one, prompted by that one, also tasted the stuff with their fingers. They too were taken and captivated by the flavor, and craving arose in them. So they sit with their hands, breaking off pieces of the stuff in order to eat it. And the result of this was that their self-luminance, their light, disappeared. And as a result of the disappearance of their self-luminance, the moon and the sun appeared. Night and day were distinguished. months and fortnights appeared, and the year and its seasons. To that extent, the world re-evolved. Those beings continued for a very long time feasting on this savory solidity, this savory earth, feeding on it and being nourished by it, and as they did so, their bodies became coarser. And a difference in looks developed among them. If you made a light and you don't look different from each other, there's only light. Light looks at other light. But now details are appearing. Some beings became good-looking and others ugly. And the good-looking ones despised the others, saying, "We are better-looking than they are." And because they became arrogant and conceited about their looks, the savory earth disappeared. So again you see here a close relationship between the qualities of the mind, of the conscious beings, and the physical world out there. So it's a connected systems. It's codependent arising. It emerges because of observation and interaction with it. And because they became arrogant and conceited about their looks, the savory earth, or solidity, or membrane, disappeared. And this they became together and lamented, crying, "Oh, that flavor, oh, that flavor." And so nowadays, when people say, "Oh, that flavor," when they get something nice, they are repeating the ancient saying without realizing it. I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. Wim Wenders, down by door. And then when the savory earth had disappeared, a fungus cropped up in a manner of a mushroom. It was of a good color, smell and taste. It was the color of fine ghee or butter, and it was very sweet, like pure wild honey. And those beings set to and ate the fungus, and this lasted for a very long time. The fungus is probably what it could be a real fungus actually at the surface, a very primitive plant on the surface of planet Earth. And as they continued to feed on the fungus, so their bodies became coarser still, and the difference in their looks increased still more, and the good-looking ones despised the others. And because they became arrogant and conceited about the looks, the sweet fungus disappeared. Next, creepers appeared, shooting up like bamboo, and they too were sweet, like pure wild honey. And those beings set to and fed on those creepers. And as they did so, their bodies became even coarser, and the difference in their looks increased still more. And they became still more arrogant, and so that the creepers disappeared. And at that too they lamented, crying, "Alas, our creepers has gone, we have lost." And so now today, when people, on being asked why they are upset, "Oh, we have lost," they are repeating an ancient saying without realizing it. Oh, the times are bad, bad, bad. You heard it before, huh? And then after the creeper has disappeared, rice appeared in open spaces, free from powder and from husks, fragrant and clean-grained. And that they had taken in the evening for supper had grown again and was ripe in the morning. And what they have taken in the morning for breakfast was ripe again in the evening, with no sign of reaping. And these beings too set to and started and fed to feed on this rice, and this lasted for a very long time. And as they did so, their bodies became coarser still, and the difference in their looks became even greater, and the female developed female sex organs, and the male developed male organs. And the woman became excessively preoccupied with the men, and the men with the woman. Owing to this excessive preoccupation with each other, passion was aroused, and their bodies burned with lust. And later, because of this burning, they indulged in sexual activity. But those who saw them indulging threw dust, ashes, or cow dung on them, crying, "Die, you filthy beast! How can you do like such a thing to another?" Just as today, in some districts, when a daughter-in-law is let out, some people throw dirt at her, some ashes, and some countdown, without realizing they are repeating this ancient observance. This corresponds to our throwing confetti on the newly married pair when they come out of church. This, in the old days, they use ash or dust. What was considered a bad form of behavior in those days is now considered a good form. And those beings who in those days indulged in sex were not allowed into the village or town for 1 or 2 months. According to those who indulged without for an excessively long period in such immoral practices, began to build themselves houses so as to indulge undercover. So this means the beginning of housing was to have a place to hide the sexual activities. Now it occurred to one of those beings who was inclined to laziness, well now, why should I be bothered to gather rice in the evening for supper and in the morning for breakfast? Why shouldn't I gather it all at once for both meals? And he did so. Then another came to him and said, come on, let's go rice gathering. No need, my friend, I've gathered enough for 2 meals. Then the other, following his example, gathered enough rice for 2 days, and time saying, that should be enough. Then another being came and said to the second one, come, let's go rice gathering. No need, and then 4 and 8 and so on. However, when those beings made a store of rice, an accumulation, and lived on that, husk powder and husk began to develop on the grain. And where it were reaped, it would not grow out again. And the cut place showed, and the rice grew into separate clusters. When those beings became together, lamenting, saying, wicked ways has become rife among us. And first we were mind-made, feeding on joy. Now the rice grows in separate clusters. So now let us divide the rice up into fields with boundaries. So they did so. Then Vasita, one greedy nature being, while watching over his own plot, took another plot that was not given to him and enjoyed the fruits of it. So they sailed hold of him and said, you've done a wicked thing, taking another's plot like that. Don't you ever do such a thing again. I won't, he said. But he did the same thing, stealing from another plot of land, a second and a third time. Again he was seized and rebuked, and some hit him with their fist, some with stones, and some with sticks. And this way Vasita, taking what was not given, stealing and censuring and lying and punishment took their origin. See, a slow mental degradation, it creeps in, slowly, and has consequences on the physical universe around them and the plants they eat because of their so dependent relation. Then those beings became together and lamented the arising of these evil things among them, taking what was not given, censuring, lying, and punishment. And so they thought, suppose we were to appoint a certain being who would show anger where anger was due, and censure those who deserved it, and banish those who deserved banishment. And so in return they would grant him a share of rice. So they went to one among them who was the most beautiful and handsome, the best looking, the most pleasant and clever one, and asked him to do this for them in return for a share of rice, and he agreed. The people's choice is the meaning of Mahasamata, which is the first official title to be introduced. Lord of the Fields is the meaning of Kataya, the second such title, and he gladdens others with Dhamma is the meaning of Raja, king, the third title to be introduced. This then, Vasita, is the origin of the class of Katayas in accordance with the ancient titles that were introduced to them. They originated among those very same beings like ourselves, no different, and in accordance with the Dhamma, not otherwise. Dhamma is the best thing for people, in this life and the next as well. So follow another evil things start to, more than lying and stealing and so on, start to emerge, and there's 4 pages more about that, but that has not so much to do with the physical universe. which has already been, and the emergence of human beings, which already have been laid out here. I hope this makes clear what the Buddha said about it, and the relation about what Buddha said about it to modern science. That he confirms, one, the non-steady state, big bounce model of the universe, where it cycles between Big Crunch and Big Bang expansion, very slow, or probably, we don't know, nobody knows, in the order of a cycle time of probably 100 billion years, where we are now approximately 14 billion years in our cycle. This cycle in the Buddha called Aeon, or Kalpa. And in one Kalpa there can be up to 5 Buddhas. And in this Kalpa actually is a very fortunate one, a Baddha Aeon, because there will come one more Buddha. There's been already 4, and there will come one more, number 5. He will explain the same. But in the next universe, the next universal cycle, after the Big Crunch, there will be no Buddhas. And human beings, when they evolve, will be cannibals. And incest will be the rule. So now is the time to practice, not to skip enlightenment in this universal cycle, with an acuteness as if your hair were on fire. Thank you for your attention. Namo Tassu Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. And have a nice